FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Well, thanks for joining us here for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week it was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And the headline story has implications for agriculture, but agriculture is not the main theme of it. Speaking, of course, of the avoidance of the government shutdown, of course, the fiscal year ending September 30th of 2015. So, Happy New Year, Phil. We started a new fiscal year on Thursday, October 1st, and Phil, kind of going the leading up, we had Speaker Boehner's resignation, a lot of things happening behind the scenes, but moral of the story is shutdown was avoided, and it wasn't a huge surprise.
No. Leaders in both the House and the Senate had been saying for weeks there wasn't going to be a shutdown. They didn't want a shutdown. They're going to avoid it. Republican leaders have gotten the message that shutdowns don't work. They always seem to come back and bite the Republicans politically. So they want to avoid it. There was this issue with Planned Parenthood and whether to try to defund it as part of the stopgap spending bill that they would need starting with the beginning of fiscal 2016, October 1st. The leadership finally worked a way to address those concerns of conservatives. So they'll be doing that separately through investigative process, through some separate bills. President Obama is not going to sign anything that defunds Planned Parenthood, and there's no way Republicans have a veto-proof majority. But those efforts will still go on.
And obviously now this was a continuing resolution. This is by no means a permanent budget. So have government funding through middle of December, and so the negotiations will continue the next couple of weeks and months between Leader Pelosi and presumably Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy. And that's not official by any means, but I think it's the writing on the wall is there. So you were telling me before we pressed the record button on this on Thursday afternoon that we've heard some interesting remarks from Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi regarding appropriations bills and their policy riders. I mean, is she saying she's not going to be looking for any kind of policy riders through an appropriations process?
Well, she and the White House and the Majority Leader on the Senate side, Harry Reid, are going to do their best to try to limit the number of policy riders that are on this big omnibus. We call it's a government-wide spending bill that they're going to have to write, try to get agreement on in December. That's a big if.
Right.
I'm not making any plans for Christmas right now. I'll say that. But that's going to be a big fight on the policy issues as well as the spending levels. But on the policy side, this is the critical area for agriculture, because many farm groups are really looking to get some provisions in that omnibus bill that would delay, block various rules that the Obama administration has finalized, not the least of which is the one redefining the waters of the United States that are regulated by the Clean Water Act.
So that'll be interesting to follow. We'll be sure to keep our eyes on that, because if they're going to block policy riders, that has huge implications, for the broader political spectrum. But agriculturally speaking, you mentioned WOTUS. We're also looking at potentially dietary guidelines, the RFS. Cool. I mean, there's a lot of things within agriculture that could be subject to a policy rider. Should the Republican majority have enough to get it on the bill, but not necessarily enough for a standalone piece of legislation.
It's important to remember, though, Republicans from the very beginning, when they took over the Senate almost a year ago, they eyed this very bill, this is an omnibus spending bill, as the way that they were really going to legislate. This is the one bill that has to be signed into law, or else you'll just get another continuing resolution that will fund the government at these 2015 spending levels. The Democrats very much want to raise the spending, both particularly on the domestic side. and they know Republicans would like to have some more money for defense. So the real leverage that the Republicans have is to provide some more money to the Democrats for 2016, and in return, Republicans are going to demanding some of these policy riders.
And also, at some point in the month of October, they've got to do something about highway funding. I imagine tax reform is
debt ceiling is another one.
I mean, there's a lot of things that they want to accomplish outside of simply just funding the government. So it's going to be interesting to see how the time is allocated on the floor of both chambers here going forward. That's going to about do it for this week in Washington Week in Review. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to stop and learn from us for a little bit. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.